Good afternoon, everybody. Today is Monday, August 18th, and on Thursday, October 21st, is going to be my tubiversary. Officially, I've had my feeding tube for 1 year. So this video is going to be about things that I've learned about having a feeding tube, my experience with having a tube, what I wish I would have known going into it, and I guess just some advice for anyone else out there who is getting their first tube, or they're just curious about life with a tube. So we're gonna get into that. But first, I feel like I need a coffee because the brain fog is brain fogging, so we're gonna go make coffee. Okay, I'm back. Look at my little furry friends. Just look at this beautiful boy. Look at him. And look at this pretty girl. Yes. They just wanted to join the video just for a minute. Look how cute they are. Look. You're gonna hear and see them running around in the background because that's what they do. So I've got my coffee. And now let's talk about my tubie story. So how did I know that I was going to need a feeding tube? I know for some people it takes a really long time to get a tube, and that was my experience because my doctors just didn't believe that I was bad enough for a tube, and they didn't understand what I was struggling through, and I didn't have a definitive diagnosis at the time. So going back to like end of 2023, I was physically struggling a lot, and I'd already lost 20 pounds, and I knew at that point that I was going to need a feeding tube because I was not tolerating food orally. I was really struggling with hydration, and so winter of 2023 is when I started advocating for myself to have a tube, and I was dismissed repeatedly. My dietitian at the time really did try to help, but because she was only a dietitian, she didn't really have a say in any of that kind of thing. My family doctor at the time was an absolute awful doctor, and was always gaslighting me, so I knew that he wouldn't help me at all, and he didn't help me at all. So that kind of left me just with my GI, which at the time she just didn't think that I was bad enough. Maybe she thought that I wasn't trying hard enough to eat. I had a gastric emptying scan that came back normal because I could only eat like a third of the food that was provided, and I was in severe pain after that test for days on end, and just my testing was not coming back with what we thought it was going to. I did have a scan that ended up showing SMAS and Nutcracker syndrome, but because of the lack of knowledge where I live regarding those conditions, they were dismissed. But that is what I ended up getting diagnosed with, is SMAS, MALS, Nutcracker, and May Turner. But anyways, so I was advocating for myself all of like 2024 to get this tube, and my GI doesn't place tubes, and so she was just like, I don't place tubes, and I'm not able to like admit you to my hospital because I don't have beds either, so you're just kind of on your own. If you think you need a tube, just go to an ER. And I was like, that's not how it works though. Like, I know that that's not how it works. And so there was a point where my husband and I almost did just go to an ER, like in the city instead of where we're at, because we would have been laughed at if we would have gone to an ER where we were. But we didn't end up doing that, and we just kept on waiting. I was living off of things like a spoonful of frosting, a spoonful of peanut butter, pureed soups as much as I could tolerate them, baby food purees, and yeah, that was about it. Chocolate chips, like a small tiny little bowl of chocolate chips those were the foods that I could tolerate, and in very, very, very small quantities. Not enough for a human, or like for an adult to be living off of. So I kept, what I ended up doing was, because I knew that I was getting worse and I knew that I couldn't go on for much longer with the way that I was going, every single specialist that my GI sent me to, I would bring up a feeding tube because I knew that all of the reports would get back to my GI and she would have to see just how serious I was about getting a feeding tube. Finally, she ended up doing her research and finding a GI that, actually back up. First, she ended up finding an IR who could place feeding tubes, but they would have had to admit me into that hospital and it was kind of complicated. So that was a plan, but it wasn't the plan that she liked. And so she kept researching and ended up finding another GI in the area that could place feeding tubes, like outpatient. And for my case specifically, I was bad enough that they decided to forego any nasal tubes and just go straight to a peg. And so thankfully this other GI was willing to take my case. He believed me right off the hop and he got me in the following week and I got my feeding tube August 21st, 2024. Just let me take a sip of coffee. Okay, so in case you don't know what a PEG feeding tube is, it is a, I don't know what it stands for, so I apologize for that, but what a PEG tube basically means is that it's a surgical tube that goes directly into my stomach, and mine is a PEG J, so then it also like goes into my stomach and then has tubing that continues down into my jejunum. So that's the type of tube that I have, and let me just show you real quick. This is what it looks like. I know, it's sticking out kind of far. That's just the way that I prefer to tape it, because if I tape it flush to my skin, I find that it's kind of painful. But yeah, the type of procedure that I had was, it was done endoscopically. So basically the same setup if you were going for an endoscopy, but then they like puncture a hole from the outside. So basically how the procedure works is they put the scope down into your stomach and then they shine a light from inside your stomach and then it will show like on the outside, and that's where they make their mark and they make a hole and then they fish the tube from inside my mouth out through my stomach, and then they continue the tubing down into my intestine and then they clipped it. So yeah, it was a fairly easy procedure, and here in Canada you hardly ever are admitted after procedures unless there's like a major complication. So honestly, they just kind of like send you home. I was barely awake and they're like, okay, get up and leave. Like, I was hardly awake, and during that time they had the dietitian come and tell me how to use it and try to explain everything to me, and it was like drinking through a fire hose because I was still so groggy from just waking up, and I wasn't sent home with any of the proper supplies or materials, or I had no idea when I would be able to start feeding and who was in charge of making sure that I had supplies and formula. So I went home and started the recovery process. Something like for me specifically, I did have complications. I ended up having extreme bleeding a couple days after surgery. I don't know what caused that. I think that he just made my stoma a little bit too large for what my tube is, and so it just was profusely bleeding. And so I did have to go and get a couple stitches placed to make my stoma a little bit smaller and to stop the bleeding. So continuing on with that, I ended up having to make a bunch of phone calls to figure out who was in charge of getting me my feeding supplies and everything like that. So all while I'm trying to recover from surgery and not being able to eat, like at that point I was like surviving off of like sips of Jello broth and yogurt, and like not really tolerating any of it. I had to eat orally because I had no feeds or anything for up to a month because they forgot to fill out the forms to send to the home nutrition program. And so by the time those forms were sent, it was already like a month with me getting set up for learning how to use my tube, getting my pump and supplies and formula. And so that was kind of like a chaotic nightmare, but we figured it out over time. So, what is some things that I really wish that I would have known going into getting a feeding tube? Number one is how painful the surgery is and how long it takes you to recover from a surgery like that. I know every body is different, and mine just hates recovery. So I take a really long time to recover from any surgery, and it took me like a month before I was able to even walk upright. It took me 2 weeks to be able to even walk to the bathroom, like I think still assisted, or at least like with my husband nearby in case I needed his help. My experience was also different because I had stitches, and so I had to go like a week without showers because I couldn't get it wet with the stitches. And I always had like these weird like intestinal spasms. I guess my body was just trying to get used to the fact that it had this tube in it, and it would spasm a lot, and it was so painful. So ice packs were like my best friends during that time, and once the pain was like more manageable, and also when I started beads was when I really started to notice a difference. And I think also the reason why it took me so long to recover is because of malnutrition. My body just didn't have the stores to help me recover either. I also really struggled with gaslighting myself before I got my tube, and even when I first got my tube, I just like worried that I was being over dramatic and that maybe I didn't actually need the tube, and what if I just tried a little bit harder to eat orally. And I felt a lot of pressure to try to do that. I don't know if it was pressure from necessarily my doctors, but I felt like this external pressure to get better. It felt like my tube was not supposed to be a long-term thing, and I felt a lot of pressure to like gain weight fast and to try to eat more, and just to try and prove that like I could get better and wouldn't need my tube for long. And that mindset did not last very long because it was making me sicker trying to force myself to still eat orally, but I didn't need to eat orally because my tube took up 100% of my nutrition. And so I took a step back from forcing myself to do anything except just enjoy life. My feeding tube really gave me my life back. It gave me energy to be able to do the things that I love, and it really gave me confidence in myself, my abilities, my I don't know, just like my journey, I guess. I also feel like I had more self-confidence now in the way that my body looked, even though like I now have this like medical device that's like poking out of my body. When you're watching your body deteriorate, I was so thin that I got to a point where I didn't like looking in a mirror because I had nothing up here, I had nothing down below, and I was skin and bones. I had one time dropped something and I was trying to catch it with my thighs, and my thighs were not there to catch it. Slipped directly through my legs, and it was really hard to see my body in that state, and I didn't feel beautiful before when I had lost all that weight. While I was waiting for a tube, like I didn't feel like myself. I didn't feel pretty. I just felt like every time I looked in the mirror or a picture, I just felt like all I was seeing was my illness, and I didn't even know what illness that was at that time. And so that was like really hard for me. So gaining weight back by being on a tube and finally having nutrition and not having to force myself to eat orally, I felt like I now felt really beautiful. Something else that I did not expect is the weight that you like get back is not the same weight that you had before, because I'm technically still lighter than what I was, but clothes fit me differently now than they did before I lost all the weight. So it came back in different places for me, and honestly I like the places that it came back, not gonna lie. So yeah, just feeling more confident and beautiful in my body since getting my tube placed and gaining back all the weight that I lost. Something else that I didn't expect, kind of how annoying it can be. I was supposed to get up to a certain goal rate so that I was only feeding like overnight, but my body physically cannot tolerate that speed, and so I end up feeding for like 22, 23, sometimes 24 hours a day. So I'm like stuck to this bad boy for like 24 hours a day, which could be kind of annoying. I do thankfully have this backpack that I use all day basically. For a while I did use my IV pole, but that was so annoying in my house specifically because our house is not like this nice smooth level. It's like they made a lot of additions to it, and so it's like everywhere you go it's like either 1 inch higher or 1 inch lower. Like the floors they're not flush with each other, so that was really annoying with using an IV pole. I also had a little accident with my IV pole in the stairs, and it fell down the stairs, but I did not fall down the stairs, so that was really scary. I didn't expect how messy it would be. I follow like a lot of other tubies, and they would share their stories of how they would spill bile all over themselves or how they would feed the bed and all these things, and I felt so like, oh, that's not gonna happen to me. It's gonna happen to you. I thankfully have not fully ruined any clothes or bedding or anything like that, which is nice, but I've definitely had my fair share of feeding tube accidents, of feeding the bed, having bile all over me. Example is my trip to Spain. It popped open while I was waiting for our plane and had to go buy the leggings that I'm currently wearing because I got completely covered in bile, like soaked down to like my underwear was completely soaked. I was so wet from bile. It was so gross and I smelled so bad. So yeah, if you think that you are above feeding the bed or having bile all over you, you're not. Something else is that it can be painful, especially in the beginning, but when you get granulation tissue, that hurts so bad. And I've been instructed to use salt on my granulation tissue, and that burns like absolute heck. I remember posting a video saying like, this is what I use, and honestly, I don't recommend that you do the salt trick. Like, was it effective? Yes, but it was also like burning my skin to the point where I was getting like holes in like around my stoma, and it was scarring, and I don't recommend it. I highly do recommend that you get granulation because that works like a charm and it doesn't burn like heck. So yeah, it can definitely hurt at times. Other things, I wasn't expecting the amount of freedom I would feel after having it, because it really doesn't hold me back at like pretty much at all. Like, my illness does hold me back from a lot of things, but having a tube has given me so much of my life back that it's not my tube that is holding me back from doing things, which is a huge blessing. Other things that I was not expecting, I was expecting not eating at like events and gatherings. I was expecting it to be very awkward, and so I was so stressed my first couple of outings with my tube, because I had missed so many gatherings up to that point that a lot of people didn't actually know that I was as sick as I was saying that I was, and I often hid the fact that I couldn't eat at gatherings prior to that by saving my like any little feelings of hunger. I would save them until the gathering so that I could eat just like a tiny bit, so that it still looked like I could eat, where I was like not eating all day to wait for that gathering. Not for weight purposes, people. I don't have an eating disorder. I didn't want people to ask questions as to why I wasn't eating before I had a feeding tube. just because it felt awkward. I didn't want to have to explain it to people. And so that was kind of my experience too with getting my tube. Like now I was like, what do I say if people ask? Like, is it gonna be awkward? Are people gonna like still force me to try to eat? I didn't really know what to expect. And the first couple times it was awkward, because that is when people ask you, why aren't you eating? And you do have to say, like, I usually went with, I am eating, and I would just like hold up my tube and they would go, oh, and then they would drop it. I also went to like my first like not family related event, which was also awkward because it was with people that I hadn't seen for like years. It was like a college alumni dinner and it was really fun. I really enjoyed myself. Was it a little bit awkward? Maybe a little bit, because I feel like I don't want people to think that I'm like staring at them while they're eating or like longingly looking at their plates. Like, I don't want to be awkward, but it just kind of like felt like a little bit awkward. But something that has helped me is like I am able to drink a little bit. So if if there's like a fun drink or something, I'll usually pour myself a little bit of that and sip on it while everybody else is eating. And yes, people do ask, why aren't you eating? And you do have to explain as much to your comfort zone. You could also choose not to explain, but I am fine with explaining, so I just say things like, I have a feeding tube where I rely on tube feeds, so I don't eat orally. It's usually what I would say. Also, like family gatherings, like leading up to it, I know it was awkward for like my mom and my mother-in-law at gatherings because they weren't sure if they should leave me a plate in my spot or not. And I did end up telling them, like, honestly, it feels weirder to me to have a plate that I'm not going to use in front of me than for my space to just be empty. So I would just prefer that somebody leave me a glass so that I can drink whatever is at the table instead of there being a plate kind of reminding me that I can't eat food to begin with. And kind of with that, like, how has having a feeding tube affected my relationship with food? It's really weird because I feel like my ability to tell time during the day is so warped because I feel like people really break up their days by meals, and I don't really have that except for my animals, so I'm often having to remind myself that my animals still have to eat food. But it's so weird to me that normal people have to eat food because I am just always eating. So, hey, don't bite. So it feels a little bit weird, honestly. It doesn't feel weird to me that I'm not eating. It feels weird that they are eating, which is so interesting. So that part feels weird. How have I tried to like keep a good relationship with food? Is I love to cook and bake. And so I still cook meals for my husband because I love to cook and I'm also home all day. And so if I'm feeling well enough, I am going to make him meals. And also I just love making him meals. And so I cook at least twice a week. I always cook enough for it to last the entire week. And he also has certain meals that he likes to make for himself too. So sometimes he just makes himself whatever he wants as well, especially on days when I'm not feeling well enough to cook for him. I also don't find it weird to sit at the table with him while he's eating. I enjoy that time when I get to hear about his day and I get to talk about my day, and I feel like it healed a place in me too by doing that, because I started a really bad habit in high school of like being on my phone or my iPad and watching things and like eating like in my bedroom or in the living room instead of at the table, which it's fine if you do that, but I just feel like it really affected my connection with my family and really wish that I wouldn't have started doing that. And I didn't want to continue that in my marriage, and so this has really helped me to be present during meal times and not like distracting myself. It's okay if you feel the need to distract yourself during meals. I know it's a lot more stressful and anxiety inducing for different people, and that's okay. Everybody's in a different place. but I personally enjoy sitting at the table and talking with people while they eat. It doesn't feel as awkward anymore. Something else is I love to bake. I'm a little bit sad though when I bake, because I bake things that are so yummy and I just want to eat them. And I do taste a little bit of it, or I try to eat a little bit of it, and usually it doesn't go so well. Which is kind of sad because I really miss my baking, and I really do miss my cooking too, because I feel like I'm a good cook and a good baker. But instead, I just bless my family and friends with my baking, especially my cooking and baking is gluten-free, and so there just so happens to be a lot of gluten-free celiac people in my life who are being blessed by my talents and love for cooking, even though I cannot personally enjoy it myself, and that's wonderful. I bring baking to like just about every event, because that's my way of being able to be included and involved in meal-based holidays. I guess some like myths about feeding tubes specifically are that people with feeding tubes can't eat orally. Some people can't, especially if they have a like gastro issue that prevents food from actually moving through the digestive system, or if you have issues swallowing, then you wouldn't be able to eat orally. I am encouraged to eat what I can orally, but because of my SMAS and my mouth, it is extremely difficult for me to do that. So I do still taste things, and I still like will have a bite of something here and there throughout the day, usually to stop my feeding tube from trying to digest itself, because that is so painful when it does that. So just putting a tiny bit in my stomach does help the peristalsis that's happening in my stomach. Yeah, I do feel more awkward eating around people than I do not eating, because I just feel like people get a little bit too excited when I do eat orally in front of them, and that feels really awkward. I know that they're excited, but just because I'm eating in front of, like eating a tiny bit, doesn't mean that I've regained that ability. It just means that I wanted to taste something, or maybe my stomach is trying to digest my feeding tube, or maybe the very rare times I do sometimes feel a tiny bit of hunger, but it's not the same hunger as yours. It's imagine being so incredibly hungry, like you're absolutely starving and you're getting ready to like dive into a big meal, and then imagine eating one piece of that meal and being stuffed to the gills. That's what my hunger is like. So I will feel that intense hunger, I will eat a small piece of cheese and be completely satisfied for hours, because that is just a part of my SMAS and mouths. I get full so fast, and it's also incredibly painful when I do try to eat things. Something else that has been a huge blessing of having a feeding tube is the Tubi community. The Tubi community is such a beautiful community to be a part of. The people are just so kind and supportive and encouraging, and I also like feel like I've gained a lot by opening my own Etsy. I have so many supporters and people who support me and support my shop, and that truly means the world to me. And I wouldn't have that if I wouldn't have ended up with a feeding tube. And so there's that. I guess a question that a lot of people have for me specifically is, will I be on a feeding tube forever? And I don't actually know that, because mouths and SNAS is complicated. Some people regain their ability to eat either after they've gained weight or after they've had surgery, but some people don't, and so I really don't know. I'm really hoping that I'll regain my ability to eat with hopefully some surgeries down the road. Unfortunately, with my SNAS, I have regained the fat pad, so my angle is technically a normal angle now, but unfortunately my distance is very small, and so I still have an active compression, which means I still have symptoms, and I will still need surgery somewhere down the line to fix that compression and hopefully be able to eat again. That's the hope anyways. Something else that I wish I would have known going into having a feeding tube is how expensive it is. I'm fortunate enough that the province that I live in covers the majority of my supplies, my formula, my pump majority of things. They cover they specifically cover my formula, my pump, my supplies, but not all of my supplies. And so some of the supplies that they don't cover are really expensive, and I need those things like monthly, and so I do have to buy those out of pocket. And I also like need to put Pedialyte through my tube now to help with my hydration, and Pedialyte is like $12 a bottle where I live, and that's expensive because I go through like a bottle a week. I think if my doctor had it her way, I would use more of it even, but I'm like mixing half water, half Pedialyte to stretch it further because it is just expensive. And anything like tubie pads and like things that are like not necessarily necessary, but they just like really add to, they just make having a tube easier, like port covers and tubie sets. They can be pricey too, depending on where you source yours from. I really do try to make mine affordable to people, but I get that it's just not in range for a lot of people. Other things that are expensive is like the pump holder that I have in here. Let me show you. I guess I'll share a couple of like tubie supplies that have really benefited me with having a feeding tube. Shout out to Hannah Canvas backpacks. It is the perfect size for a kangaroo omni pump, and you can get that on Etsy. I will link everything down below. I know I said that in a previous video and I didn't, so I'm sorry. I'll do it now. So this backpack was one of the more affordable backpacks too. It was like $30 to $40 for like a small like mini backpack, which honestly is really good because if you get anything that's like labeled or altered to a feeding tube, all of a sudden it's like $100 to $200, and I was not about to do that. This works perfectly fine for me. Another thing that I have, so this is a holder from G-Tube Station, and it is for a 2-bag Omni system. I really love this thing. It comes in handy for me. It makes me not need to use a heavy pole, and it's more like transportable. And I also like that, like, you saw me, I pulled this directly out of my backpack, and so I really like this. There are some design flaws in this that I find personally I would change if I was the maker of this item, but I do recommend it. The other thing is it's just unfortunately really expensive. Like, it is made in the US, and for Canadians shipping to Canada, it is insanely expensive. Like, I think I paid about $100 altogether with shipping, which was not the fault of the Etsy seller at all. It wasn't. There was just extra fees, probably tariffs, who knows. But yeah, I use this all the time, every single day, and I do love it. So yeah, I will link this down below as well. Tag my store down below for you guys too. I do make and sell tubie sets and a couple of other things. I have some Malice and SMAS awareness shirts, and I just barely started making like chronic illness awareness like stickers, and I do feel like some of my designs are like quite funny, and they're beautiful. They're not funny looking, just like the quotes on them are kind of funny. So I do like that. I will link my store down below. I'm wearing this set currently. Super cute. Other things, I already did mention it, but if you struggle with granulation tissue, I highly recommend that you get Granulotion. I will link that down below as well. That is unfortunately also so expensive to get here in Canada. It was like 50 bucks a tube for this like teeny tiny little tube, which thankfully you don't need very much, so it doesn't last a very long time. But now it's like $100 a tube to get here in Canada, which is insane. So thankfully I haven't needed to buy it again, but I do recommend it. Another thing, if you're someone like me who has adhesive allergies, and like for myself, I do need to tape my tube down because it is a dangler. I like to use Skin Prep. It's the only way that I will not have reactions to the tape, and even then I still like react every now and then. I use it for my PICC line too, but skin prep I highly recommend if you have sensitive skin. I have shown it in a previous video, but if you are someone who travels a lot, or if you like to be able to charge your pump like on the go, I highly recommend that you get this like little adapter piece. I forget the shop, but I will link it down below. I bought one for when I went to Spain, and it came in handy on so many occasions because I was able to charge my pump on the airplane, and I was able to charge it while I was out in Spain as well. It was just easier than bringing the whole block that attaches to charge my pump, because you just use a USB-C cord, and that made it so easy because most people have USB-C cords now because of phones. And it also charges really well from like those battery pack things, like those rechargeable battery packs. My pump charged amazing with a USB-C cord going from the battery pack to my pump, so I highly recommend this like tiny little adapter piece. Works great. I think those are like the things that made my feeding tube journey the easiest. Of course, having a tube, like the reason for having a tube is not fun, and having a tube itself can be really annoying and not fun, but it really has given me a piece of my life back, a piece of my personality back that I haven't seen for so many years due to my illness, and yeah, it has given me my freedom back. So here's to 1 year being tube fed. If you have any questions that I didn't answer, you can feel free to comment them down below, and I'll do my best to answer those. Don't forget to give this video a like in celebration of my tubiversary. Also, don't forget, the giveaway is now officially closed. As you're watching this, I've already picked a winner, and so the winner has already been contacted at this point. So thank you to everybody who entered my giveaway, and for everybody who follows my journey on my Instagram and my YouTube and supports my Etsy store. I really do appreciate all of you. Don't forget that I post every Thursday, so I'll see you guys next week. Bye! Good morning, everybody. Today is my tubiversary, and as a thank you to all of you, I have put a sale on my shop for 4 days only, so running today until Sunday, you can get anything in my shop for 15% off, no code needed. So head on over there, link is in this bio. Enjoy! Don't bite. Don't bite. We've got zooming mode activated, just give me a sec. What do you say for yourself? I'm getting really warm.